We've already covered quite a bit of ground in these videos, and the ground we've mostly covered about the IFS model of the psyche are parts. We've looked at what parts are, that we all have multiple parts, and why especially extreme parts protect us, that do things in our life that create pain, that create suffering for us, why they do what they do. And just that model, just those few distinctions would already be a lot. But there's one very essential thing about the IFS model that I want to introduce in this video, and that's that we are not just made out of parts. We are not just made up out of subpersonalities, but IFS assumes or has the point that we have a self being a true being, our spiritual center, and that self is there in everybody and is actually part of our internal system, and it has a place in that internal system. And I want to go into that today. Rather than giving you theory about the self, I want to introduce it the same way it's found its way into the IFS model. And that was a little bit by surprise. So according to the stories Richard Schwartz tells about it, he developed this new model. He developed the IFS model, but before it was even named IFS or anything in that way, he was working with clients. And clients would come to him with their problems, and when he would ask them where their problems come from, they would name parts. That was how he naturally learned about parts. They would speak of, one part of me wants that, one part of me wants that. Now, going to that example we've been covering of the man by now who has this never again, I need to work super hard. Let's assume he comes into therapy, and when asked what the problem is he will describe, I have this really intense, I have to work so hard, I'm scared of being punished and things could go wrong. And one of the things Richard Schwartz then did is, where do you feel that part? He just asked, where do you feel that part? And clients would name that the part is there. And usually the part was blended with them, so they kind of felt like they are the part. Oh, I have to protect myself, I have to do that, And he used one very simple method from family therapy, where you ask a family member that gets in the way of a real conversation happening to step aside. And coming from a family therapy background, Richard Schwartz did just that with parts. He would ask the part, in this case, the part that's all protected and working really hard, he would just ask the part, can you step aside? Can you give us a little bit of space? And many times the parts would allow that. They would just step aside. And what happened usually in the beginning was that he would ask a part to step aside. The part would step aside and immediately another part would come up. So immediately another part would come up, and the client would be like, oh no, now I don't feel like I have to work hard anymore. Now I feel like I'm not doing enough. It's like I already know I'm not doing enough, I'm bad. I should be doing more, and it feels like I'm really angry at myself. I'm really pissed off with myself. So Richard Schwartz would know that there's another part, and he would ask about that part, and then he would again ask, oh, and can that part step aside? And many times it did. And another part comes up. Oh, now I feel like I just really want to be happy. I don't want those other parts. I just want to be happy and enjoy my life and have a nice time. That's what I would really like. I just want to be happy. And Richard Schwartz would also get to know that part and then ask, can that part also step aside? And oftentimes it did, and then something unique would happen. What would happen if he would then ask, now what's the part that's there now? The clients would say, it's not really a part. This is just me. So, not really a part, this is just me. And that point that clients would suddenly just say, this is me, this is who I am, this is not a part, this is different, would happen again and again. And not just that parts would get to that point of saying, this is just me, but they would also, when asked to describe it, and when they, from that this is me place, were about to describe how they relate to the other parts in the system, he found that there were that there were always kind of the same qualities there. And these qualities were what he now calls the 8 C's. The clients would describe, I feel calm. And they would feel curious about their parts. And they were compassionate with themselves and with other people. And they had courage to face the things that were happening in them. And they described these 8 C qualities, and they consistently did that. And those C qualities, courage, calmness, curiosity, were so close to what spiritual schools describe as the self every person has, that Richard Schwartz just called that the self. And in his experience, and what IFS now has as a model, the self is a part of our inner system, and the self is what's naturally there. When no part has taken over, when no part has taken over the system, there is a self, and that self has these qualities of being calm, being connected, being curious. So beyond being just a theory about parts and the relationships between parts, why parts do what they do, IFS in the center of the model has this self, and it has the theory that that self is actually our true being, who we really are, and that for therapy to work, we need that self to be present. And the beauty about how IFS views the self is that with all the parts we have, the self is always just one step away, always just one letting go of the parts away, so that then the natural qualities of the self can arise. These qualities are nothing we have to develop or learn or even cultivate. But when the self is there, when we are in self, these qualities are what's most naturally present in us. It's how we naturally relate to ourselves and to other people. And that revelation is really at the heart of how IFS works with people, knowing that they have a self, knowing that the self is always just one stepping aside of a part away. And it's what makes the model so beautiful to me, because it's about our parts, and each part has its reasons for doing what it's doing. But we also have a self, and that self is always there, it's always present, and it can never be broken or hurt. We may have many, many parts that are doing destructive things, that are in a lot of pain, but we have that center, that self, that can hold all of that, and that will never ever go away.
You never know what's around the